She was fired for bringing her son to work. But the millionaire boss changed everything. Before the story begins, tell me something. Where are you watching from? Write it down in the comments. I'd love to know how far our stories are reaching. And if you love emotional love stories full of twists and true feelings, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That really helps our work grow and motivates us to bring you even more heartwarming stories. Lauren Hayes woke up to the insistent sound of her alarm clock at 4:45 a.m. The small room was dark, with only a sliver of streetlight escaping through the crooked blinds. The walls, stained by winter dampness in Charlotte, smelled of mold and cheap soap. The bed creaked under the weight of exhaustion, and next to her, wrapped in a blanket with faded dinosaur prints, was Caleb, her 5-year-old son. He slept with his forehead slightly furrowed, as if dreaming of things only kids from forgotten neighborhoods know. Lauren watched him for a few seconds, eyes brimming and chest tight. It was one of those days where everything already started wrong. The babysitter had texted at 3 in the morning canceling again. My brother got arrested and I have to take care of my nephews, said the short message on Lauren's cracked phone. She got up without making a sound, tied her light brown hair in a low bun, washed her face with cold water from the dripping tap, and put on the light gray cleaning uniform. The pants were a bit loose, and the shirt, worn at the collar, still carried the smell of disinfectant. In the cracked bathroom mirror, she saw her deep dark circles and freckles faded by fatigue. She took a deep breath. She couldn't miss work. Not again. She went back to the bedroom and gently touched her son's shoulder. Caleb, honey. Time to wake up. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking like he was trying to figure out if he was still dreaming. It's too early, Mommy, he murmured, his voice hoarse. I know, baby. The babysitter's not coming today. You'll have to come with me, but it'll be quick. I promise. Caleb nodded silently, already used to living outside the ideal script other kids seem to have. Lauren helped him put on a thick hoodie, sneakers she bought at a thrift store with leftover grocery money, and packed a peanut butter sandwich in his lunchbox. As they left the small apartment, she carried a backpack with quiet toys, paper, and pencils, and a little water bottle. The ride to the airport was silent inside a nearly empty bus. Caleb rested his head on his mother's shoulder while she watched the still sleeping city pass by the window. Mirror-covered buildings, billboards glowing with smiling faces selling things she could never afford. The city was growing, but not for them. At the cargo terminal, Lauren passed her uniformed coworkers with a discreet smile. She knew she was breaking a rule, but she needed that payday to avoid eviction at the end of the month. She took Caleb to a corner in the back of the storage area where she stacked 2 blankets on top of a box, away from the cameras. She placed the toys there and a little pair of headphones that only worked on one side. You're gonna stay real. Quiet here, okay? Look, there's crayons in that little book you like. I'm gonna draw us at the playground. And then, can I draw the sky? Of course, baby, but no noise, all right? I promise, Mommy. Lauren kissed his forehead, feeling that familiar weight in her chest. That kind of guilt only those who have to choose between their job and their child understand. A dry, heavy ache that not even tears can ease. Then she put on her rubber gloves, picked up her broom, and started her shift, unaware that her life was about to change, not because she deserved it, but because of an injustice. Lauren swept the rough warehouse floor as if each motion were a silent prayer. The smell of dust mixed with old rail grease filled the air. The metallic clatter of cargo cart wheels echoed through the space while forklifts zipped past, indifferent to the fragility of the invisible lives moving around them. From time to time, she glanced discreetly toward the corner where Caleb stayed. The boy sat on the blankets, hood covering part of his face, colored pencils scattered across the concrete floor. He drew with focus, as if the entire world fit onto the crumpled sheet in front of him. For a moment, Lauren felt peace. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The relief lasted seconds. A different sound broke the rhythm of the warehouse. Fast, firm footsteps echoed across the industrial floor. It was the sound every worker feared, a management inspection round. 4 suited men crossed the space, followed by a burly security guard and a manager infamous for his arrogance, Mr. Maxwell, a tall white man with perfectly slicked back gray hair and a cold stare that never showed patience. Lauren held her breath. She turned her back, trying to look busy. But Caleb, curious, stood up. Unaware of the danger, he took a few steps out from his hiding spot. That was all it took. "What is this?" barked Maxwell's voice, coming to a sharp halt. The others stopped with him. He was pointing directly at the boy. Asterisk. Lauren dropped the broom and rushed to her son like the world was about to collapse. "Caleb, go back, baby, please." She dropped to her knees, pulling him close. The boy looked at her, confused, clutching his sketchbook tightly. "Is this boy yours?" snapped Maxwell, his voice dripping with judgment. Lauren looked up, still kneeling, her hands on her son's back. "He's my son, sir. The babysitter canceled. He's only here because I had no choice today." "You brought a child into a hazardous operational area? That's unacceptable. You violated company policy and endangered a minor's safety." "I just wanted to work." He was quiet. In a corner, he didn't bother anyone. Lauren's voice trembled, but her stance remained firm. She wouldn't beg. 2 more security guards appeared behind her, alerted by radio. "Escort this employee out immediately. She's terminated. Effective now." Maxwell turned his back as he gave the order. Caleb's eyes widened. Tears didn't come, but his short, rapid breaths gave away his fear. He grabbed his mother's arm. "No, I don't want to leave." "Mommy?" Lauren rose slowly, her son clinging to her. The shame burned inside. Other workers had stopped to watch. None spoke. They only observed. Some with pity, others with silent complicity. One of the guards approached. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me." She nodded and looked down at Caleb. He held her hand tightly, trying to be brave. "Mommy, are you sad because of me?" Lauren froze. The question hit like a punch to the chest. She crouched again, cupped her son's face in both hands, and answered, her eyes heavy with held-back pain. "No, my love. I'm sad because the world is unfair, but you were never a mistake." Caleb hugged her tightly. And in that moment, surrounded by cold stares and concrete walls, Lauren didn't cry. She simply walked out, head held high, with her son in her arms and a soul marked, unaware that someone, from a distance, had seen it all. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there, but was. And that someone would change everything. Nathan Caldwell was at the terminal for a simple reason: a surprise inspection of the facilities, one he himself had ordered days earlier. But as the CEO of one of the largest air freight companies in the country, he rarely showed up at the warehouses in person. Still, on that sharp, gray-skied morning, something had pushed him to leave the glass-walled office at headquarters and walk through the cold structures of the logistics depot. He wore a tailored navy blue suit, his polished shoes a stark contrast to the concrete floor. His dark brown, wavy hair was neatly combed. Despite his firm posture, there was a certain heaviness in his broad shoulders, an old silence in his gray-green eyes. He was walking alongside an assistant when he heard a commotion coming from the cargo sector. He lifted his gaze and saw the crowd. His corporate instinct made him stop. Something was off. He approached quietly, without announcing himself. He stopped a few meters away, observing the scene with sharp eyes. At the center of the corridor, there she was, the cleaning worker in the gray uniform, her face tense, hair tied in a messy bun, eyes red from holding back tears, and beside her, the boy, a thin little boy around 5 years old, gripping his mother's hand with such strength. It was as if the world might rip her away from him at any moment. What hurt most was his expression. Eyes that understood far too much for someone so young. Nathan watched as Lauren knelt and held her son's face. He saw her lips move, even if he couldn't hear the words. "No, my love, I'm sad because the world is unfair, but you were never a mistake." The words came to him too late, but the gesture stayed burned into memory. She hugged him like she was shielding the only thing that still made sense. The boy rested his head on his mother's shoulder, and together they walked out, surrounded by indifferent eyes and doors that now felt heavier than ever. Nathan couldn't move. Strange feeling opened in his chest, like a slow crack. It wasn't pity. It was something else. A mirror, because it had been almost 2 years since he'd seen his own daughter's smile. Lily. Since the accident that took Amanda. His wife, the little girl, had fallen into a heavy silence. Diagnosis: selective mutism. No words, no sounds. Just drawings, just looks. Nathan had spent thousands on psychologists, specialized schools, occupational therapists. But what no one dared say out loud was that Lily didn't need treatment. She needed safety. And he no longer knew how to give that to anyone. The assistant beside him said something about protocols and disciplinary actions, but Nathan raised a hand, asking for silence. His eyes were still fixed on the door where Lauren and her son had just disappeared. "Who is she?" he asked, not looking away. "Excuse me?" The assistant blinked. "The employee." "Her name?" "Oh, Lauren Hayes, cleaning staff. Just got terminated, sir. Reason: brought a child into a restricted area. Manager Maxwell gave the order." Nathan didn't reply. He simply looked down at the floor where one of Caleb's drawings had fallen. A sheet of paper showing 2 figures, a woman in a gray uniform and a boy with a blue cape on his back. He knelt down, picked up the crumpled paper, traced the crayon lines with his finger, and spoke softly, more to himself than to anyone else. "She shouldn't have been exposed like that. Not this way." No one answered. The corridor fell into silence for a few seconds. Then he folded the paper carefully and slipped it into the inside pocket of his blazer. In that moment, Nathan Caldwell wasn't just the CEO anymore. He was a man facing a living memory. And what he had just witnessed, he wouldn't forget anytime soon. The company's mistake was now personal, and this would be the beginning of something he couldn't name yet. But he already felt that both their worlds had changed, even if neither of them knew it. Nathan Caldwell got home almost at 9 that night. The silence was as thick as the dry winter air in Charlotte. The mansion in the gated neighborhood looked more like an empty set than a home. Lights switched on by motion sensors, untouched dinners left on the kitchen counter by an invisible housekeeper. Everything was tidy, clean, and cold. He hung his blazer over the back of a chair and loosened his tie with tense fingers. Caleb's drawing was still folded in his inner pocket, like a secret burning against his chest. As he climbed the polished wooden stairs, he heard a soft sound coming from the room at the end of the hall. Light footsteps, distant giggles. From a TV. He pushed the door gently and found Lily, his 5-year-old daughter, sitting on the beige carpet of her room. Surrounded by sheets of paper, colored pencils, and silence, she wore a blue cotton pajama with little stars and had her blonde hair in a loose braid, messily done by the nanny. She didn't look up when he entered, just kept drawing, tongue pressed to the corner of her lips, pure focus. Nathan stood at the door, watching her. "Hey, princess, how was your day today?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. Since the accident, Lily hadn't said a word. Only Drew, The psychiatrist called it a self-expression mechanism. Nathan called it absence. Absence of sound. Absence of joy. He slowly knelt beside his daughter and looked at the paper she was finishing. It was a simple, childlike drawing, but full of meaning. A woman with a ponytail and a gray uniform holding the hand of a boy with a blue cape. Beside them, red hearts floated in an orange sky she was coloring with intensity. Nathan felt a lump in his throat. "Who are they?" he whispered, pointing at the figures. Lily looked at him, no smile, and pointed behind him toward the television. Nathan turned. The TV was on, the volume low. A local channel replayed footage from an amateur video already spreading online. The shaky recording showed the exact scene he had witnessed earlier in the cargo warehouse. Lauren, being escorted by security, holding Caleb's hand. The boy paused in the hallway and said something to his mother, who then hugged him tightly. Caption on the screen read, "Employee fired for bringing son to work." Public outrage spreads online. Nathan stood still. His face reflected faintly in the darkened screen as the video played on. The public was already judging. People were commenting, sharing, getting angry. But he had been there. He had seen it all. And he'd done nothing. Lily was still watching him. Her big, clear, quiet eyes fixed on him. The resemblance to Caleb was undeniable, not just in age, but in the way they looked at the world. Eyes that said everything without speaking. Nathan looked back at the drawing and said, voice low and rough, she protected him. Even as she was being fired, even with everyone watching. She never let go of his hand. Lily remained silent. But slowly, she pushed the drawing toward her father. Nathan took the paper carefully, as if holding something fragile. And for the first time in a long time, something broke inside him. It wasn't anger. It wasn't guilt. It was a calling. He looked again at the TV, then at Lily, then at Caleb's drawing, still folded in his pocket. The world could pretend that woman was just another face in the crowd. But he knew this wasn't just another headline. It was something that had touched him deeply and could no longer be ignored. The question now was, what would he do about it? The next morning, Nathan Caldwell arrived at corporate headquarters wearing the same dark suit from the night before, his eyes distant and the child's drawing still folded in his pocket. He skipped coffee, greeted no one. He simply walked into his glass-walled office and shut the door, ignoring the packed agenda waiting for him. He called Human Resources with a direct order. I want the full record of Lauren Hayes, today. In less than an hour, the reports were on his desk. Internal evaluations, time logs, notices, anonymous supervisor feedback, all spotless. Lauren was known for being punctual, discreet, and dedicated. Not a single warning in 3 years. No complaints. No issues. Nathan frowned. He turned the page and found the name of Maxwell, the manager responsible for the dismissal. He pulled up Maxwell's record too. The contrast was jarring. Piled up complaints, including verbal harassment and abuse of authority. All filed away with vague notes like unsubstantiated or closed due to lack of evidence. He leaned back in his leather chair and closed his eyes for a few seconds. He had allowed this to happen under his own roof. Worse, he had witnessed it. That afternoon, he dismissed his driver and drove himself to the neighborhood listed in Lauren's HR file. Narrow streets with cracked sidewalks, kids playing soccer between old cars, rows of attached houses with peeling paint and improvised clotheslines. Nothing there resembled his world, and yet he found more truth there than in any boardroom. He parked beside a public school and waited. At exactly 4 p.m., he saw Caleb run out through the gates, backpack bouncing and a drawing clutched in hand. Behind him walked Lauren, her simple bun pinned with a pen, a thrifted blouse with crooked buttons, and eyes fixed attentively on her son. She smiled when she saw him. A tired smile, but whole. Nathan stepped out of the car and approached. "Lauren?" He called, voice lower than he expected. She stopped. Her grayish-green eyes narrowed when she recognized him. Caleb shrank behind her leg, gripping her hand tightly. "Mr. Caldwell." "What are you doing here?" she asked. No kindness, but no open anger either. "I came to talk, if you'll hear me out." She crossed her arms. The late afternoon sun cast soft shadows on the cracked pavement. "I already heard everything I needed to in that warehouse." Nathan nodded, taking a steady breath. "You were wronged. I have the proof. You were one of the company's most exemplary employees, and the man who fired you shouldn't even be in that position. I've taken care of it." Lauren stayed silent for a few seconds. Caleb gripped her hand tighter. "So why didn't you do anything in the moment? You were there." The question sliced like a thin blade. Nathan didn't try to explain it away. He simply looked her in the eyes. "Because I hesitated. And I regret it." Lauren lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked back at him. "I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to offer you your job back. With a raise. In another department, far from that team, you deserve better than what you got." She took a deep breath, looked at Caleb, then at the man standing before her. "I don't need charity, Mr. Caldwell. I just needed humanity. That day." Her voice was firm, not arrogant, just honest. Caleb looked at Nathan for a few moments, then squeezed his mother's hand tighter, as if sealing her words with a small but absolute gesture. Nathan swallowed hard. He knew he deserved that no, and maybe because of that. That woman deserved far more than just a job. Saturday dawned overcast. In Charlotte, the scent of rain hanging in the air. Lauren wore a faded denim shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, her hair tied back in a messy knot. It was routine by now. Leave Caleb with the neighbor for a few hours and walk to the small community nonprofit downtown, where she helped sort, donated food, clothes, and read to kids on the weekends. Fair. Unlike the rigid corporate world, people called her by name and looked her in the eyes. And as modest as the place was, it was where she felt useful and seen. She was organizing bags of children's clothes when she heard steady footsteps approaching the old wooden floor. She turned slowly. When she saw Nathan standing there, between donation boxes and handwritten posters, it took a few seconds to process if he was really there. He was out of the setting she was used to seeing him in. Wearing dark slacks, a light shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no blazer, no suit, no arrogance. Lauren lifted her gaze, puzzled. "Mr. Caldwell? What are you doing here?" Nathan stepped forward, visibly out of place in the humble setting, but doing his best not to show it. He carried a small leather folder in his hands and looked less like a CEO and more like a man. "I came because of you. I found out you volunteer here. I figured this would be a good place to start." She crossed her arms, wary. "Start what?" Nathan took a deep breath. "The company is launching a new program, focused on including single mothers in the workforce. It'll involve partnerships with community organizations, training, scholarships, integrated childcare. And I need someone with real insight to help shape it. Someone who knows what it's like to live off what fits in a paycheck envelope." Lauren stayed quiet, eyes locked on his. Nathan continued, "I want you to be the assistant on this project. Fixed salary, flexible hours, no uniform. Just your experience and your perspective." She hesitated. Inside, a silent battle was waging between disbelief and necessity. She took a step back, hands on her hips. "It's a good project, but I have some conditions. Of course, I need to keep attending my night classes. I'm finishing nursing school, and Caleb, he gets out of school at 4. I pick him up myself, every day. No exceptions. Nathan nodded instantly. You have my word. You'll work on your terms and with respect. Lauren studied him for a few more seconds, then extended her hand firmly. Then you have my answer. They shook hands. And for a brief moment, the handshake was more than a professional agreement. It was the beginning of something neither of them could quite explain. A bond that didn't stem from power, but from restoration. Nathan looked around. Children running, voices overlapping, the smell of paint and fresh bread. I've never been in a place like this, he said, taking it all in. It's not pretty or efficient, but it's human, Lauren replied. He smiled, barely, but genuinely. Maybe that's exactly what's missing in my world. And in that moment, without realizing it, they had both taken a step beyond what they knew. A step toward the unexpected death the following weeks brought a strange calm to Lauren. The new position demanded responsibility, yes, but it also offered dignity. She now worked on a high floor of the company's administrative building in a modest office with natural light, plants by the window, and for the first time, a desk with her name on an acrylic plaque. Each morning, she dropped Caleb off at school, worked until mid-afternoon, and left promptly to pick him up. Sometimes, when she needed to stay a little later to finish reports for the social project, Caleb joined her at the office. Nathan had personally authorized it, and it was on one of those quiet late afternoons that something unexpected happened. Nathan's daughter, Lily, had spent a few hours at the company that day, accompanied by a tutor. She sat alone in an empty meeting room, quietly drawing while waiting for her father to finish a meeting. When Caleb passed by the hallway, clutching a cloth doll in his hand, he paused upon seeing the quiet, serious blonde girl inside. They stared at each other. Lauren, just a few steps behind, was ready to call her son back, but Nathan, standing farther ahead with a coffee in hand, gave a small gesture. Let it happen. Caleb approached slowly. Hi, I'm Caleb, he said. With ease. This is Captain Dino. He fights math monsters. Do you know math monsters? Lily looked up. She didn't reply, but she didn't look away either. Silently, she just observed. Caleb took that as curiosity and sat on the floor, excitedly showing her the doll. He has an invisible cape. It only shows up when you're scared. Lily tilted her head slightly, and the corner of her mouth almost moved. It was barely noticeable, but to anyone who knew her, it was a sign. Caleb kept going, animated, and he has a power no one sees. He hears everything, even when we don't say anything, just like you. Lily blinked slowly, then picked up a red-colored pencil and drew a heart in the corner of the page. She slid the paper toward Caleb. Lauren watched from the doorway, arms crossed against her chest, a lump in her throat. Nathan stood beside her, silent, eyes fixed on his daughter. For a moment, no one said anything. Then it happened. Lily let out a soft sound, almost a whisper, of laughter, a tiny sound, but real. It wasn't a word, not a sentence, just a laugh. Contained, timid, but sweet. The first since her mother's death. Nathan slowly turned to Lauren. She met his gaze, teary-eyed but steady. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. In that moment, without contracts, expectations, or promises, something began to take shape. An invisible bond was forming, not between Lauren and Nathan, but between the two children who carried silences bigger than their age. And somehow, on that carpeted floor, among colored pencils, cloth dolls, and unspoken voices, a space was born where pain was finally being touched. Gently. Nathan watched Lily smile silently. He closed his eyes for a second, as if offering thanks without words. And for the first time in a long time, he felt that maybe, just maybe, he could also begin to heal. Not as a powerful man, but as a broken father. At 7:43 the next morning, Lauren arrived at the headquarters building. She wore a simple navy blue blouse, dark pants, and a worn-out sweater, traces of a life where elegance had never been a priority, only survival. But something felt off that morning. The lobby was quieter than usual, as if a heavy, invisible weight filled the air. People whispered. Eyes darted away too fast. Phones disappeared under desks. Lauren pressed her badge to her chest and took a deep breath. Something inside her already knew. At her desk, she powered on her computer and opened her email. Dozens of unread messages, but one stood out in red. Urgent. External repercussions. Warehouse video. With her stomach churning, she clicked. The link led to a local news portal. Across the top of the screen, in bold letters, single mother's dismissal with child in arms moves social media. Viral video sparks outrage. The video began with shaky cell phone footage. It showed the exact moment she ran to Caleb, hugged him, tried to protect him. The manager shouting, the arrival of security, the uncomfortable silence from her coworkers. But the sound of her own voice was what cut deepest. I'm sad because the world is unfair, but you were never a mistake. The line echoed like an emotional slap. She watched until the end, eyes locked on the screen. She didn't blink. She didn't cry. She was frozen. At the bottom of the site, comments piled up. She was more of a mother than many ever were. This is inhumane. What matters more, a child or a rule? $1 million company, heart of stone. Lauren closed the laptop slowly. Her face didn't burn with shame, but with a deep exhaustion, as if the past few weeks had been ripped from her soul and laid bare to the world. She barely had time to compose herself before a summons popped up. Urgent meeting with the company's reputation committee. She climbed the floors like someone walking into an arena. In the glass-walled room were 3 top executives. The VP of Public Image, a corporate lawyer, and the same administrative manager who'd never once looked her in the eye. None of them looked comfortable. The woman spoke first. Lauren, first of all, we want to say we're very sorry for everything that happened. Saying sorry isn't the same as doing things differently, Lauren replied, firm. The lawyer cleared his throat. The case has gained unexpected traction. It's on major news portals. The backlash is huge, and this threatens partnerships, contracts, even the very project you currently represent. So you want me to apologize for being fired for taking care of my son? Not exactly. But we do need to reorganize our messaging. The board believes that, to preserve neutrality around the Single Mothers campaign, it might be best if you temporarily step away from the public role. Lauren remained still. The silence stretched. Then she stepped forward, eyes clear, but glistening. So that's it. First you kicked me out with my child in my arms. Then you used me to clean up the company's image. And now that the truth is out, you want to erase me again. But this time you can't. The world already saw me. The lawyer shuffled the papers. In front of him, the VP crossed her legs and looked down. No one responded. Lauren stood, grabbed her bag, and left. There was nothing left to say. Hours later, sitting on a bench at the square where she used to wait for Caleb after school, she received a voice message. It was from an older cleaning staff worker. The voice was shaky, nervous. Lauren, I shouldn't be sending this, but you need to know. Mr. Caldwell, he was there that day. Behind the divider. He saw everything. It's not a rumor. I saw him too. He watched your firing and didn't say a word. She clenched her phone as if gripping it could change what she'd heard. The noise of cars, birds, children playing disappeared. The air felt heavier. The ground seemed unsteady. Nathan, the man who had approached her with empathy, who had offered a new chance, who had listened so many times in silence, was there, the whole time, and chose not to act. Caleb ran out of school shortly after, arms wide. "Mommy, look at the drawing I made." She hugged him tightly, tighter than he understood. "Are you okay, Mommy?" Lauren looked into his eyes. And in that moment, holding that small, warm body, she felt the sharpest pain of all, the pain of trusting someone again. "I'm not, baby, but I will be." Because now she knew the forgiveness she had offered until then had been built on silence. And silence had been the worst betrayal of all. The sky over Charlotte that morning mirrored exactly how Lauren felt inside, gray, stifling, on the verge of collapse. Since the night before, the world no longer felt the same. The revelation of Nathan's silence had torn something open in her, something too deep to name. It wasn't just hurt. It was the realization that on the day she needed someone most, he was there, and chose to do nothing. Caleb was asleep, exhausted after crying without knowing why. Lauren had spent the night awake, sitting on the old sofa with a cup of cold tea in her hands. His face in the dark, the boy's question, the recording. It all echoed like she was trapped in a cruel loop. At dawn, she didn't hesitate. She dressed in a simple blouse and dark jeans, tied her hair in a tight bun, as if trying to hold back the fire simmering beneath her skin. She stepped off the bus with cold hands and a heart burning too hot. She climbed the floors of the building without waiting for authorization. Nathan's assistant tried to stop her, but the intensity in Lauren's eyes was enough to make way. When she pushed open the office door, he was alone, standing by the panoramic window, gazing out at the city's skyline like a man searching for an exit that didn't exist. Nathan turned slowly. When he saw her, his eyes narrowed with a mix of surprise and weariness. He already knew. "Lauren," he began, his voice low. She raised her hand, cutting him off. "Don't say my name like nothing happened." Nathan fell silent, but his shoulders betrayed the weight he was carrying. She took 2 steps forward, steady. "You were there, behind that divider. You saw me being humiliated in front of my son. You saw me being treated like garbage, and you did nothing." He closed his eyes for a moment. It was a mistake. A mistake? She laughed bitterly, her eyes burning. A mistake is forgetting a meeting, spilling coffee on a report. What you did was a choice. Nathan moved away from the window, ran a hand over his face, visibly shaken. I froze. I saw it all and I hesitated. I didn't know what to do. Lauren stepped closer, her voice faltering for just a second, but strong. "You're the most powerful man in that building. One gesture from you would have changed everything, and still, you turned your back. That's worse than yelling at me, because at least the ones who yell take a stand. You just stayed silent." Nathan took a deep breath, leaning on the edge of the desk. The hardness on his face gave way to something more fragile. "Since Amanda died, I haven't been whole. I look at Lily every day and I don't know how to save her from her silence. So I became a man who follows rules, who avoids risk. It's how I've learned to breathe again." Lauren frowned, her chest tightening. She hadn't expected him to mention his late wife. But even so, her pain also needed to be said. "I didn't get that luxury." Nathan looked at her. "You had a choice." "I never did," Lauren said, voice low but sharp with a pain that cut through everything. "You get to hide behind grief, responsibility, your image. I had too. Get up the next day with my son in my arms, knowing the world sees me as nothing but a poor woman getting in the way of the system." Nathan swallowed hard. Her words pierced him like old thorns, but he didn't defend himself. She continued, eyes glassy but dry. "You offered me a second chance, after denying me the first. And now you want to protect me with projects, titles, reports. But what I needed that day With someone who saw me, that's all. The silence that followed was heavy but honest. He didn't interrupt. For the first time, Nathan Caldwell wasn't preparing a reply. He was just listening. Lauren took a deep breath and stepped back. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I won't be used as a shield to clean up a company that threw me away like a broken part. If you really want to repair something, start by owning what you were that day, someone who failed, and who now needs to learn how to listen. She turned to leave. But before she reached the door, Nathan spoke, not with arrogance, not with self-pity, but with something real. I saw you, and I saw my daughter. Lauren stopped but didn't turn around. And still, you did nothing. Because I was afraid of acting on impulse, of doing the right thing the wrong way. But now, I'm more afraid of doing nothing at all. She didn't reply. She just walked out. As the door closed, Nathan remained still in the middle of the room. For the first time, not as a boss, not as a widower, just as a man who had finally understood too late that empathy is not a protocol, and maybe, just maybe, there was still time to be different. Spring arrived in Charlotte with a light breeze carrying the scent of newly bloomed flowers and the feeling that something new was beginning in Lauren's life. The season felt like a living metaphor for everything she had endured. After the pain, humiliation, and silently opened wounds, something in her path was finally starting to blossom, not easily, but truthfully. That April morning, the small apartment where she lived was quiet. Caleb, now 6 years old, wore his light blue public school uniform with a wide smile and a spark in his eyes, the kind only freedom can give. Do you think they'll like my drawing today? He asked, backpack on one shoulder, a crumpled paper in the other hand. Lauren, already dressed in her freshly ironed white coat, looked at her son with tenderness. She was heading out too, not for a cleaning shift, but for her final day of internship at the community hospital. After sleepless nights, double shifts, and tests taken with burning eyes, she was finally graduating as a certified nursing technician. If they don't like it, that's their loss. You draw with your heart, she said, adjusting his cap, and that matters more than any grade. Caleb giggled and gave her a kiss on the cheek before running down the hallway. As she locked the door, Lauren paused for a moment and looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror by the entrance. Her face was still the same, pale skin marked by dark circles and soft freckles. But now her eyes carried something more than exhaustion, a new kind of light. The light of someone who fought, fell, and rose again so many times she no longer feared starting over. Hours later, the hospital where Lauren was finishing her final shift honored her graduation with a symbolic gesture. The department coordinator handed her a heart-shaped pin that read, "To care is to resist." At the same time, across the city, Nathan Caldwell stepped onto the stage of a state conference. He wore a light suit, but his presence was different. Less pride, more humility. In an auditorium filled with business leaders, officials, and reporters, he announced the launch of a groundbreaking initiative, a partnership between his company and the state government to provide comprehensive support for single mothers, childcare, stipends, flexible hours, vocational training, and psychological support. This project wasn't born in a boardroom, he said into the microphone. It was born from a mistake I made when I stayed silent when it mattered most, and from the courage of a woman who refused to be silent in the face of injustice. In the audience, few knew Lauren had been the inspiration, but Nathan knew, and for the first time, he didn't need others to know in order to do the right thing. The months that followed weren't about romance, but about rebuilding. Nathan and Lauren didn't rush into promises or fairy tale second chances. They exchanged messages, always with respect. He listened. She challenged him. Over time, they began sharing lunch on Fridays, while Caleb and Lily played on the grass. Beside the company building, Lily spoke now. Not with everyone, but with Caleb, and with her teacher, who now heard her tell made-up stories with passion. The silence that once ruled her world had been replaced by sweet, colorful little sentences. My friend Caleb says if you keep feelings inside, you explode. I'd rather let them out on paper, she'd say, drawing smiling clouds on notebook pages. One afternoon, while watching their children under a tree, Lauren turned to Nathan. They healed each other without even realizing it. And us? He asked cautiously. Lauren didn't answer right away. She simply looked at him gently and said, "We're learning, Nathan, one step at a time." He smiled. And in that smile was something no amount of money could ever buy. Peace. At the technical school graduation, Lauren walked up on stage while Caleb clapped wildly in the crowd. She wore a simple dress, borrowed from a neighbor, and shoes she bought, with her first paycheck from her new job. When she held the diploma in her hands, she raised it like an invisible trophy, one that carried sleepless nights, slammed doors, and swallowed words. As she stepped down, she was met with an unexpected hug. Lily, her hair in 2 braids, held a bouquet of tiny flowers. Nathan stood just behind her, eyes brimming with emotion. "You did it," he whispered. Double quotes. "No, we did it," Lauren replied, because there were no heroes or victims in that moment. Just real people, trying to be better for one another. And what about you? What did you think of this story? I'd really love to hear your opinion. Leave a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments telling us how much this story moved you. If you liked it, give the video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. And before you go, I picked out another even more emotional story that's sure to touch your heart. Go check it out.